Chatters, chatties, welcome home for a Great American Chat, a podcast where we chat about great American media. I'm Chad Maurice. Today we are getting into the third episode of the Great American Pure Flix series, Destination Heaven. But before we do, this Thursday, June 20th, the Great American Book Club is meeting again at 7 p.m. Eastern over Zoom. Cammie and Father Randy will be joined by author Nancy Nagel, who is going to be talking about her book, The Law of Attraction. And of course, as always, you can sign up for the Great American Book Club on Great American Family's website at greatamericanfamily.com, and they will email you the Zoom link. So let's get into Destination Heaven. The title of this episode is called Perfect Harmony. It's directed by Nathan Scoggins, and it's written by Lisa and Laura Bunbury, based on the story by Tommy Blaze. The guest stars are, oh boy, I'm not sure I can pronounce her name. I know I can't. It stars Cozi, I'll give it my best shot. Zeuhlsdorff. Zeuhlsdorff, I don't know. She plays Regina, a girl who dreams of a career in music. Her parents are played by Minda Larson and Darren Tunder. So the synopsis says an Ivy League bound girl with an incredible talent for singing clashes with her parents over her college plans until God shows up to help everyone arrive at some surprising conclusions. So the episode gets started in Portland with Regina playing a keyboard and singing in a cafe. A college recruiter from Kenzer College approaches her and tells her how talented she is, and he wants her to come to his college and major in music. He says, "You have a future in the music industry, and we have one more spot open just for you. You need to let me know by Monday, though." She says, "Oh, I would love to, but I've already applied to colleges my parents want me to go to." He says Kenzer is the school for you. She prays to God. God shows up. She tells God about the offer to go to Kenzer College. She asks, "What do I do? I would love a music career, but my parents would never let me go there." She says, "Is it wrong for me to ask you for a miracle?" He says, "Before we talk miracles, why don't you tell your parents what you want?" So she does. She goes home to tell her parents. Her parents congratulate her, and she gets confused. They say, "You received a letter from Princeton today, and we couldn't wait to open it. You got in." She says, "Mom, Dad, we need to talk." She tells them she has a lunchtime gig singing at a cafe, and they knew absolutely nothing about this. What kind of parents are they? They don't even know what their kid is doing during the day. She says, "Singing is something I want to do." They say, "What? Singing is something you do for fun. It's not something you make a living at." She tells them about the college recruiter that wants her to go to Kenzer and study music. Her dad tells her, "Don't be silly. You are going to Princeton." She gets upset, says, "I can't believe you won't even consider what I want." Her parents talk. Her dad says, "We've done everything we could to set her up for success, and she wants to throw it all away to pursue music." Her mother says she is going to make her own decision. Why don't we pray for her? Then God shows up to talk with them. He asks, "What are you praying for? That you want Regina to go to Princeton instead of Kenzer?" Her dad says, "We want Regina to listen to you so she knows what's best for her." God says, "Oh, don't worry. Regina listens to me all the time." Regina then talks to God again. She says, "I told my parents what I wanted. They told me not to be ridiculous, and they wouldn't listen to me." She asks, "What are the plans you have for me?" He says, to hope and prosper. Okay, Spock, live long and prosper. She says, I don't even know what to hope for anymore. A career in music has always been a dream of mine. God says, is that what you want from me? To tell you that you're good enough to pursue music for a living? She says, what if singing is what you want me to do with my life? He says, you don't even know what your parents are thinking deep down inside. He tells, or her dad tells God, we are not letting Regina throw her life away. God asks, so you think Regina singing would be throwing her life away? Her dad says, I want her to get a real job. And God says, so you think singing is not a real job? Her dad says, no, it's not. He says, the greatest day of my life was when I got tenure at the university, and I knew I could provide for my family. Oh, buddy, your wife is standing right next to you when you said that. Oh, man, I bet she didn't like that statement too much. God says, wasn't your greatest day when you made a commitment to me? He says, yeah, but this can't be the life you want for my daughter. God explains that Regina is very talented, and when I hear her sing, it brings me joy. She should share her gifts with the world. Her dad says, come on, you can't be serious. I can see what's going to happen. She's going to wind up performing to half-empty rooms and not doing anything meaningful with her life. She could get a job making real money rather than working for tips in a jar. Regina's mother then chimes in and says, someone else was offered a lot of money to sing. She explains, when I was 19, a producer from Los Angeles wanted me to go to California to record a song. I said no because it felt like a crazy dream. She says to God, looking back, I could have shared the talent you gave me. Regina talks to God again on a park bench. She asks, what value is there in me sharing my gifts with others? What kind of question is that? And that's kind of what God says to her. She says, let's be realistic. How many people actually make a successful living in music? God says, very few. She says, I would be crazy not to go to Princeton. My dad is right. And then she asks God, how am I supposed to know what you want me to do? All right, back to her parents. Her mother tells God, we just want her to do what you want her to do. Her dad says, and make a difference in the world. I don't want Regina's life to be like a song that ends and people forget about it. I want her impact in the world to last. Now, wait a minute. If someone writes or records a record, a really popular song, it does last in the world. It lasts forever. I mean, there's popular songs that are like 200 years old. People are still singing them. God explains that a flower blooms in the meadow and then dies. Even if no one saw it, it made a difference to me because I love to create and put beauty in the world. God then shows her parents a book written by her father. And her dad says, wait a minute, I never wrote this book. God says, yes, but you thought about it. He says, yeah, I was going to write a book about growing up in Seattle, but I never did because I thought it would be a waste of time. Regina's parents sit down and talk with her. She says, you can save your breath. I'm going to Princeton. I don't want to be like a flower in the meadow and not have my work or life be seen by anyone. Her dad says that the first person filled with the Holy Spirit was an artist, Bezalel, something like that, chief artisan of the tabernacle. God cares about who he gives talents to. They bring beauty to the world. And when the Israelites marched into battle, it was the musicians who led the way, which means God first had to prepare them with armor and strength. Or does that mean that the musicians were expendable? They were the first ones killed. Her parents tell her they think she should go to Kenzer. Regina says, I don't get it. What happened to Ivy League? Something practical with a pension. Her dad says, maybe you can be a rare musician with a 401k. Or maybe you can just make God happy by doing what you've been gifted to do. Then the episode ends with Regina's mother singing at the cafe. She announces that she's going to start singing in public. Then she introduces Regina. Regina sings an original song that she wrote, and the credits roll. So this episode is about following your dreams and using the gifts that God gave you. And it makes you think about opportunities not pursued, opportunities in your life that maybe you regret not taking advantage of. And everyone thinks back on their life and thinks, what if I would have done this or that? How would my life have been different? And watching this episode, I actually agree with both Regina and her father. I think you should pursue your dreams, but if your dreams aren't going to pay the bills, then you need a full-time job to support yourself. I mean, most hobbies like the arts, music, painting, acting, things like that, it's not something that you can pursue full-time unless you have a lot of money to live on when you're between jobs, because those aren't full-time jobs. You have to get a full-time job in order to pay your bills. And then you can pursue what your passion is or what you're passionate about on the side, part-time. And then maybe, just maybe, if you're lucky, you can get a break and you can earn a living working full-time doing what you really want to do. But that happens to very few people. I was thinking about this. It's kind of like me in this podcast. I would love to work on this podcast full-time and get paid to do it. But I do it on the side, part-time, just for fun and to support Great American Media. But of course, I have to have other jobs in order to pay the bills. So that's kind of what this, to sum up this episode, it is about pursuing your dreams and using the talents that God gives you. But this episode also makes you reflect on the choices that you made in your life. At least it did me. So yeah, another good episode. And speaking of choices that you make in your life, the next episode, there we go. The next episode is about a woman with cold feet, having cold feet the night before her wedding. So we will get into that episode next week. And as always, you can see my socials there running along the bottom. You can follow me, subscribe to the podcast. I'm on Instascam, Facebook, and YouTube at Great American Chat, and on X at GA Chat Podcast. Let me know what you're thinking of this series. I'm enjoying it so far. And until next week, when we get into the 4th episode, you keep the faith, keep smiling, keep your friends close, and keep your Great American family closer.